So one of the most striking elements in the book is the clock. It feels more like than just a concept, something like a living force controlling the character's life. So how did you come up with that idea?
I think in addiction and recovery, there's a lot of emphasis on your drug of choice. And I was thinking about, if someone is a reader that doesn't have experience with addiction, if you just kind of come right out the gate and you say, I'm addicted to heroin, for example, a lot of people that's not in their world. But if you create what it does to you, if you create how it affects your life and the lifestyle and the stress and the pressure. In the original story, I never actually named the drug because I think what was most important is this constant clock looming overhead. That lifestyle, that's what I remember the most is every few minutes I'm looking at the clock. So I wanted to capture that aspect of it. And so on Friday, I do a long run and I'm starting to like taper it back down. So today I did 6 miles, which wasn't too bad.
Wow.
And yeah, I'm getting old, so you get banged up a little bit. But I feel good though. I feel good.
Yes. So let's start. Hello everyone.
Okay.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Page of Pandora. Today's episode is intense. We are diving into a book that doesn't just tell a story. It puts you inside a mind that's constantly battling itself. I'm talking about Gas Guzzler and the Clock by Benjamin S. Turney. This book explores addiction in a way that feels raw, immediate, and honestly uncomfortable at times. It follows a character whose life is controlled by the clock, a powerful metaphor that shapes every decision, every relationship, and every moment of survival. What makes this story stand out is that it's written from a place of real experience. The author actually began writing these stories during early recovery. So today we are going to explore not just the story, but the psychology, the reality, and the deeper meaning behind it. Welcome to the podcast, Benjamin.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
So first of all, I want to start at the root. You began writing these stories during a really vulnerable time, early recovery. What pushed you to write in that exact moment instead of waiting until the things felt more stable?
Yeah, I think thinking back to then, I had been living in such a crazy way for so long that it was like my brain was just overwhelmed with ambition, and I wanted to do all these things. I felt like I was making up for lost time. When I was in rehab, I did a lot of reading. I read several books, and I started jotting notes down, and I started just kind of thinking about stories that I wanted to tell and kind of coming up with the themes and what I wanted to communicate. But I think the answer is I just had this overwhelming drive to do something, and this was the perfect time to do it. I think in life we talk about things all the time and we don't follow through, and I had just done something really big in going to rehab, and so I wanted to continue with that and do things that I wanted to do, positive things.
Right. So, have you ever wanted to be a writer from childhood?
Say that again. Have I ever wanted to what?
A writer from childhood, or it started in the between journey of recovery?
Yeah, I wanted to the title story, Gas Guzzler and the Clock. I thought about that for a long time, and I think that's what we do, right? Is we talk about what we're going to do. And my dad always said, writers write. So if you want to write something, it isn't this magical thing that only a select few people can do. It's work. And so if you want to write something, if you have something to say, you have to sit down and do it, and you do it every day, and that's what I do now. But to answer your question, yeah, I wanted to write for a long time. I just never took the time to do it. It was just always something I talked about. Like, I have this book idea, and then I actually, said, just sit down and do it, man.
Right, right. So you chose to keep many of the stories mostly unedited to preserve that raw mindset. So was that a difficult decision, knowing it might feel imperfect but more real?
Yeah. I think I have a lot of buddies that are creative, and they struggle with that all the time, like making something perfect. And I think that when you allow it to be a little more raw, I mean, it should be coherent. It should be entertaining. It should be thoughtful. And I hope when people read it, it moves them. But I think when you get hung up on trying to be like overly verbose or poetic, it loses some of the charm where you're like, I am a person. And sometimes when I speak, it's clunky, and sometimes I don't choose the perfect word, but I am going to always tell the truth.
Right, honestly, that was a right call because if you would have polished it too much, it might have lost that rawness.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. That's what I was hoping.
So one of the most striking elements in the book is the clock. It feels more like than just a concept, something like a living force controlling the character's life. So how did you come up with that idea?
So I think in addiction and recovery, there's a lot of emphasis on your drug of choice. And I was thinking about, if someone is a reader that doesn't have experience with addiction, if you just kind of come right out the gate and you say, I'm addicted to heroin, for example, a lot of people that's not in their world. But if you create what it does to you, if you create how it affects your life and the lifestyle, and kind of the stress and the pressure, I think those are things that everybody can relate to. So in the original story, I never actually named the drug because I think what was most important is this constant clock looming overhead. And when I thought back to that lifestyle, that's what I remember the most is every few minutes I'm looking at the clock. So I wanted to capture that aspect of it.
Right, even the story shows how quickly priorities shifts when someone is in that state. So was it important for you to make readers feel uncomfortable with that reality?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of there's a lot of stigma around addiction, and what I learned being around so many other people in rehab that were struggling, because I hid it for so long. I think I've always presented really well, and this was an opportunity for me to be vulnerable and open and talk about things. But I think there's a stigma that like we're just partying and we're indulging all the time, and we don't have any, we don't take responsibility for things. And the reality is it stops being fun a long time ago. And I wanted to capture like it is, now, I work full time. I have 4 young children, and I'm very, very, very busy, and my life is not half as stressful as when I was doing that stuff.
Right, that really shows in the book. And I would say, even though the book is labeled as fiction, it feels very real. So, how much of this story is inspired by the real experiences versus imagination?
So it's definitely fiction. I mean, I think it's not as though this person is this person in my life and this person is this person. It's fictionalized, but I think the tone and the type of like inner monologues and the things you think about, and the type of things are very, very real. Um, without getting too far into it, or spoiling too much, there's times in my life where I was Jay, who's the main character, and there's times in my life where I was Elbow, which is another character, and I kind of drew from all these experiences in my life to kind of create these characters and themes in the story.
Right. By the end of this first part, Jay says that he's on a different type of survival. So, what do you want readers to take away from that specific moment of loneliness when the phone stops buzzing and the excuses run out?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that the story is centered around doing everything humanly possible to avoid this thing that's hanging overhead, and now it has always been inevitable. It was always going to happen. It was always going to reach this point, and so now everything changes. Now it's not about how do I prolong the inevitable. It's about how do I survive this catastrophic thing that I can no longer prevent.
Right. So, do you think addiction isolate people more internally or externally?
These are great questions. I mean, it's definitely both. I think I don't know, I have to think about it, but I think my answer is internally. There's a section later in the book where I talk about a term that I learned that really resonated with me, and it's called terminal uniqueness. And basically, what the idea is that we always tell ourselves nobody understands us, nobody is suffering with these things the way I am. I don't have anyone to talk to. They wouldn't understand. These problems are mine and mine alone. And so you're just constantly at war with yourself. And that's the beautiful thing is when you open up and speak and talk to other people, you find out, wow, there's a lot of people that know exactly what I'm like, and I met people that everything about our lives, our race, color, religious background, political beliefs, upbringing, all these things are different, but we share this one thing, and we're in the same place at the same time trying to achieve the same thing. And I think that's beautiful.
Right. I kind of agree with that, and I really liked your answer. You explained very beautifully.
Thank you.
And this is something that I personally kept thinking about. If someone reading this has never experienced addiction, this book almost acts like a window into that world. But if someone has, it probably feels like a mirror. So, who did you have in mind while writing this book?
So, my biggest thing was I was originally thinking about drug addicts, and I was thinking about people who were like me early on in recovery. And, like I mentioned earlier, I read a lot in rehab, and, sitting down and engaging my mind and reading a book from beginning to end, it did tremendous things for my confidence. It was like, it was something I did. It was something I didn't quit. I saw it through, and it's hard to overstate what that does for you at that stage in your recovery. So I was thinking I wanted to write relatable stories that were short enough that you could finish it in a couple sittings, but also, enough meat on them that it gives you things to think about and take with you on your journey. So that was who I was originally writing it for. But then I also thought about, it spreads to the family members of addicts. It spreads to people that may have misinformation about addiction, and it spreads to people who just may want to read a captivating story. And so that's why, like I mentioned in the original story, I kind of wrote about the circumstance as opposed to specifically the drugs, and it's about this and this and this.
Right. So, another question which I want to ask, do you think guilt is one of the strongest forces in addiction, or does it actually make the cycle worse?
Yeah, I think everything it's cyclical. Is we kind of develop habits to escape from reality. And um, if something stresses you out, or it saddens you, or you feel guilty or ashamed of yourself, it's very easy to go and use drugs or alcohol to escape from that. And then those unpleasant feelings go away for a while. But then it wears off and you feel even worse than you did before because you didn't do anything to address the problem. You just kind of covered it up for a while, and it goes on and on and on. So I think guilt and shame play a huge role in it.
Right, that's interesting because it did feel like guilt was present in the background all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And another question I want to ask, is there any advice that you would like to give to a person who is going through the same phase of life, loneliness, addiction?
Yeah, all the cliches that I used to think were corny and lame, they're the truth. It's one day at a time, and if you do everything humanly possible to stay clean today, then you get up tomorrow and you do the same thing, and then eventually you look back and you have years. I remember being in group in rehab, and one of my buddies was celebrating his 90th day clean, and I distinctly remember thinking, like, that is impossible. There's no way I can do that. And then you focus on one day at a time, and now we have many years later and a beautiful life that, I spring out of bed every morning. So, you can't change your past. The future isn't here yet. Stay present and focus on today. That would be my advice.
Right, that's a very helpful advice you gave. Another question that I want to ask, since you are into fitness, so how much of this fitness and working out helped you during your recovery phase?
Oh, it's huge. It's everything. I think it's good to have a routine. And so I'm really big about like sticking to my routine. I think I got in trouble when I just kind of went whichever way the wind blows me. And yeah, I'll go do that. Yeah, why not? I'll do that. But when I kind of wake up, I sip my coffee, I write for a little while. If my idea is good, I flesh it out. If it's bad, I get rid of it. But I write every day, and then I go on to my workout, and it's kept me out of trouble so far. It's stuff I really look forward to doing.
I really want to know, how do you stay consistent, because I am someone who can't even commit to a 3 months membership of a gym.
Yeah. I a lot of people ask me that. I think there's a boxer I'm a big fan of. His name's Alexander Usyk, and he has an interview once where he talks about the difference between motivation and discipline. And I think that's exactly where I fall, is your motivation changes all the time. I don't always feel like doing it, but I've developed discipline to where I do it no matter what. And I think the secret is, if you stick to a routine for a good month or month and a half, it just becomes part of what you do. Like you don't have to motivate yourself to brush your teeth or take a shower. It's just part of what you do. And so when you get things to fall into your life like that, it just becomes like everything else that's part of your day. Which I know that I'm making it sound easy. It is really hard in the beginning, but again, it's something that everybody is capable of, for sure.
Right. Thank you so much for the advice, and overall, thank you so much for being so open today and talking to me. It was a very thoughtful conversation with you. And to everyone listening out there, if today's conversation resonated with you, I highly recommend picking up a copy of Gas Guzzler and the Clock. It's raw, it's real, and it's a perspective we don't hear often enough. So go check out the book. It's available on Amazon, and you can also connect with the author on Instagram to stay connected with his creative journey. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thank you for your kind words. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Have a good day ahead. It
All
has
right.
been a lovely
You too.
conversation.
Thank you. Yeah, good talking to you.